slept less than 8 hours yesterday. How about 6 hours? Less than 4 hours? Oh my god. Did it somewhere feel good when you had to raise your hand more number of times than the people around you? For some people this might be a yes. But isn't sleeping less something that negatively affects you and is potentially harmful? But even then, why do we feel happy when we have simply performed an action better than the other person? This might lead us to thinking if humans are inherently competitive and might just have a need to one-up the other person. Conventionally, this happens when you show off, when you try to show that you have or possess better things than the other person. But recently, we're starting to visit this trend on the other side as well. Let's say this competition is about how much you lack, about how you're worse off rather than better off than someone. People would think that since showing off good things is so prevalent, no one would want to talk about the negatives. But in reality, if we base this question simply on the fact that you want to be competitive and you want to one-up the other one, it happens on the other side as well. As it happened for the sleep example, even when it's a harmful activity, you just feel better for having done it better than someone else. Now, the question is, why are we discussing this today? And have people always talked about things that go wrong in their lives, the negatives? We can all agree with that with the increased awareness in mental health. People are starting to talk about what issues they have, what problems they have. And a lot of conversations nowadays are about your past experiences, something bad that happened, about how something didn't work out. And talking is very important. It's an important step to healing. But when the competitive nature of man comes in here, it gets dangerous. Now, I'd like all of you to please keep an open mind for the next part of my talk. Let's say some people actually have it worse, but there's a chance that a lot of people might make it seem like they have it worse simply because in that conversation, they felt left out. They felt like, oh, even if the topic is problems, someone else has more to say than I do. And because of this, they might sometimes emphasize or glorify what they have gone through because for them, it's simply something that they didn't be a part of or they felt left out or someone else had more to say than they did. Now, trauma and depressed, these are very intense terms, but people use these terms so casually nowadays, even for small bits. And this could be because they are trying to convince themselves that, oh, probably I've been through an intense level of suffering. Now, don't get me wrong, some people, they actually might have problems, and problems are subjective. But even then, a lot of times, people might take something minor and portray it as something major. What this could lead to is a distorted self-perception of your life problems. And our life is influenced by our perception. The difference between a glass half filled and half empty, the difference between an optimist and a pessimist, it's simply perception. And because of this inflated perception, what eventually happens is that you have problems moving on. When you're constantly talking about what's not working out in your life, you're focusing on the gaps. And because of those gaps, somewhere when you talk about what you're lacking, you do subconsciously start wishing for what you wish you had. Simple example, when we crib about how much traffic there is on Mumbai roads because of the construction. Every time we say there's so much traffic, we do indirectly convey that we wish there was lesser traffic. But the same can't always be said for life problems because somewhere it is what it is. But if you constantly keep talking about the deprivation, the moral is you are not accepting reality and you're denying the facts. And because of this is when we lead to thinking if there is something like over-sensitization. Now, before we explore this term further, I'd like to give a very simple example. Nowadays, it's often said that when there's a newborn kid or any young infant, you should never over-pamper the kid because they will never learn to be tough. They will never learn to move on. They won't know how to go strong fast. And just how there is a difference between protective and overprotective parenting, I think there is also a difference between sensitization and over-sensitization of mental health. For instance, right now people are talking about their problems, which is important. Talking is an important step to healing. But a lot of times, because they're getting that validation, which they need, they do need the affection. But if we over-validate someone, we are somewhere telling them that it's okay to be in that phase. When in reality, it is quite possible to come out of that not okay part of your life. If we singularly promote it's okay to not be okay without telling people that it's possible to fight back, then somewhere I think we're not doing justice to what psychology is. Now, before I go on, I'd like to talk about why I'm talking about this in the first place today. So a lot of times when I've tried to vent about something that's, not working out or something that's wrong, and whenever I try to vent, most of the times the other person listens and then they just go like, "Ye to theek hai, par ab tu mera sun." And In a lot of scenarios, irrespective of whether I verbalize it or not, even when someone else is telling me something that they're not okay with or something that's not working out for them, even in my mind somewhere I go like, this is fine, this keeps happening, even I've gone through this, hote rehta hai. And upon more self-reflection and also observation among groups, it just got me thinking to one thing, why can't we listen more? So psychology at its core, people nowadays think that psychology is all about people's problems and what's not working out. But psychology is not just that. Psychology is also about solutions. Psychology is how you come back every time you fall. Psychology is basically about comebacks, right? But currently what's happening is that we're only promoting the side where you stop talking. And if we don't move into the second part of the talking phase, which is the dealing phase, I feel like it's going to go very bad in the future because people won't know how to move on. For instance, right now, while we're educating people about mental illness, symptoms, disorders, things like that, I feel like it's not a greater but a much needed equal focus also needs to be on positive aspects of psychology, like teaching people things like self-awareness, motivation, self-confidence, self-esteem, content, moving on, satisfaction, concepts like these. Because in life, obviously it's ups and downs, but we need to teach people how they can use this positive parts of their life and channelize that energy into the rest of their life, because somewhere the other way around is happening right now, which is leading to a lot of us not feeling happy about ourselves. So to conclude, I'd simply like to state that think about this at length later today, and the next time, let's say you're in a group and someone's venting about something, try to think if your mind, or let's say for the other person, from both sides, if it instantly goes into whether who has bigger problems, things like that. And I think you'll understand why I got this topic up here in the first place today. Thank you.